if I could jump over to that question about privatizing certain things, look, we went in during the first, what do we call it, incursion into Iraq. I was out at that point, but we put a bunch of guys into Iraq at the behest of some clients that we had that were going to be doing infrastructure work out there in Iraq. They already knew it. And so we had been doing some things for them elsewhere, and they said, look, from a security perspective, can you help us out? And so we started putting people in there really at the same time, or just slightly ahead of when the troops went into Iraq. And we're a private business, right? So we started building up an operation out there. And this is early days. This is before Blackwater became a household name. And so we watched that private contractor, private security industry build in Iraq over a few years. And it was a bit of a shit show because it's a private business. And so we saw people looking and going, I can make money doing that. So you had, a large number of mooks with no experience thinking, I'm going to start a security company. Yeah. And they were banging around Washington, D.C., where we had an office. And I'd come back and they'd say, oh, could you meet with these guys? They want to, talk to you about,
lobbyists? Is that what this was?
Well, these were guys that were pseudo lobbyists, or they were just guys that are hanging around Washington and thinking, I'll bet I could get a contract somewhere, and this is a good business. Yeah. So you started getting all these companies showing up. And I remember talking to some of these companies, and whether they were British or American or whatever, and look, you don't have an endless supply of trained people with sufficient experience to operate in a hostile environment like that, whether it's providing security or gathering intelligence or whatever. So that bar kept lowering, and I'd talk to somebody and they'd say, yeah, I was SBS, out of the British teams, and you think, no, you're not, because we've got the former commander, working with us, and he's never heard of you. And this would happen time and time again. So eventually people were hiring just, people with no experience, no business being out there. And that's when shit started to happen. And so then what happened when that kerfuffle started was that the government got involved and said, look, we've got to regulate this. We've got to come up. And so there was this effort with the private businesses now starting to see, wait a minute, our business is being threatened because now the government's looking at it. Maybe the government's going to step in and start regulating this. So we started meeting as private contracting companies saying, we've got to form an association here, set some standards, right? And well, you're doing that because you're trying to protect your business. You're not necessarily doing it because, none of these guys really cared about that, but they were doing it so they wouldn't lose their contracts. Mm-hmm. So some of the government, I guess my point being, government involvement in there was actually an important part of it, right? Because it helped.
The regulation.
The regulation, setting some standards, getting some of the idiots out of it. So I'm conflicted because I can see both sides.
So after they came in and you guys set the standards, how did it work out in comparison?
You know what? It worked out better because there was more policing of protocols, of hiring, of requirements. There was more, So I don't know. It was one of those things. I just wanted to raise the point. I don't want to disappear down that rabbit hole.
Didn't the companies like that? Like if I'm Halliburton and I find out that my security team was maybe substandard or not as good as they pitched me in the PowerPoint deck, and I'm hiring them to protect basically U.S. civilians who have agreed to go into a hostile theater and work on an electric power grid project, right?
Right.
So now I'm a little bit concerned by that. And this kind of didn't that help the companies? Weren't they appreciative that now they have some sort of reliance and standards?
Right.
That my civilians that are over there are working on a dam, it was a lot of infrastructure.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And they did appreciate it, and it was beneficial to them. You would like to have thought that they would have been, look, the companies we worked with, they were very clear about we expect, the following in terms of standards, but I guess my point being is that. If you leave it up to private business, it may not. There's always that statement, oh, private business is how to run things, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to be more efficient than government. Yeah, but there is a place for government at times.
Or it goes the other way, right? Because Wackenhut has actually hired, remember Wackenhut hired to do the private prisons in the U.S.? Mm. And they've actually hired their own lobbyists because they like tougher criminal laws because it makes an influx of prisoners that need a place to sleep, right. Which means you build another prison.
Yeah, so for private business to and to benefit from wars, that concerns me because you know what I'm saying. That concerns me. Part of me is kind of like
the military-industrial complex.
Totally, exactly. I was going to go there, but now somebody, Bob, can you increase Tyler's audio as well, like 10%? But for me, so then the other side of it, if I'm being a devil's advocate to myself, is it's going to happen anyways because a guy on the inside that's on the government, hey, you do this, I'm going to give you this. Hey, lobbyists coming in. I think the problem here, for that to work out, is if you eliminated lobbyists, a lot of things would be more honest and transparent because these guys that are making 10, 20 million a year, a lobbyist is making, it's one of the highest paying jobs in America, by the way. If you enjoyed this short clip, click over here to watch another short clip. And if you want to watch the entire episode, the entire podcast, click here.